I need to get a sheer bra.
Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast. Orestez needs a sheer bra. Everybody else, how are you doing?
Yes.
Good, except that my name says Handor and my name is Gidget.
Oh, balls.
So that's not my name.
Hang on, I can fix this.
My name's
You guys,
Gidget.
you guys introduce yourselves and I'll fix it.
Yay.
We're going to talk about role-playing later, so you can role-play as Andor.
Oh, there you go.
No, I want to roleplay as Handor.
Trying not to say something horribly mean that he might come and watch this later.
Try to not say something? Why would I not say something when he's not here if I say horrible and mean things to his face?
Well, because that's the fun part.
That's true. The fun part is being mean?
Yeah,
Well,
fun part's
to his
always
face.
me.
To Matt, yeah, a little bit.
You know, I've actually spent the last week and a half on his other channel, hanging out with some of his friends,
He is
and
friends.
they treat him just as badly. So
Oh, wow.
it's definitely him.
Aw. He's just easy to be the butt of every joke.
That's the kind of attention he attracts. As a psychologist, you could say that he has a type and identify that, and then tell him he needs to go through therapy and change out his friends.
Well, I don't know. I think even though we make fun of him, we also support him when he needs support. So there we go. Oh, am I Gidget now?
All right.
I'm me.
Everybody's labeled what they're supposed to be. All right.
Yay. And we moved.
Yeah, I moved you guys around because, stuff happens.
That was magic.
Anyways, so...
Okay, so Tyler, do we have any announcements?
Yes, we do. We have our Dauntless stream tomorrow. It might very well be the last Dauntless stream because I think our heroes have reached the end of beta. Correct me if I'm wrong. But July 14th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is our 4th episode for Dungeon World.
Yay!
So that's coming semi-soon. We have a little bit of a gap of time because of our little fire pyro over there is doing a lot of fireworks shows because she does that stuff. But July 14th is the next Dungeon World episode. There will be hats, and Katie will kill a child.
Not necessarily. And the kid...
Yeah, there might not actually be hats.
There are definitely at least 2 hats.
Yeah, there may or may not be dungeons,
and
I think.
No babies were killed in the last episode. Nightsun did a very good job of saving the baby.
Oh, I had to leave before that. All I knew is you had lured that poor helpless child into a gelatinous cube.
I mean, I think the kid lost a leg, but he's still alive.
He lost a boot.
Well, then that's officially a trend.
Boot.
So he lost his leg to a cube instead of shooting it off.
Yeah.
Kate wasn't just happening. So
All right. Orestez is a robot.
That was robot-y.
Yes, you are, in fact, a robot. But yes, I do have a trend of shooting off people's legs in RPG games. Moving right along.
Leg fetish.
Let's move on to...
So for those of you just joining us, before we get into what we're excited about, because that can take a little time, we are going to discuss intro to role-playing. So if you are new to the channel or you're just joining us, hang out for the next 10-15 minutes while we talk about shit we really want to play and do, and then we're going to go into the intro to role-playing. Take it away.
As if this part is not just as important as the spotlight topic.
Oh, I'm sure it is. We didn't mention it at the top because, I screwed up the overlay.
Because my name is Gidget, not Andor.
That's true.
We will give you the tabletop lexicon coming
Woo-hoo!
soon.
Coming soon.
All right, so what are we excited about, guys?
I don't know. There's a bunch of shit on this list.
Oh, yeah. That thing.
Well, of course, I think anyone who's not under a rock knows it was E3 this week. So
Yeah.
lots of stuff coming out.
Pretty good one too, actually.
Yeah, it's been kind of lackluster for a couple of years. I think everyone's just kind of saving up, and there's a lot of big things coming. Division 2, I'm super stoked about. Hopefully, they learn all the lessons they needed to learn from the first game and its failures.
Mm-hmm.
But they're already set on doing 1 year. Like, they will not be doing a season pass for the first year. It's going to be completely free updates.
Smart.
So they're doing 1 year of content on them. I think it's going to do a lot to generate the goodwill. a lot of people lost from the release of the first one. Even though the game did do an amazing job of fixing itself, righting the ship eventually, not everyone back though.
Has there been any new information out about the Fallout 76?
Yes. There's a 50-50 chance it will be absolutely incredible and super fun, or it will be terrible. It is going to be an always-on online survival-based Fallout game, which in and of itself sounds really exciting to me. But one of the key things are there are no NPCs.
There's robots.
At any time you see a human in the world, that is a physical person.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So they want emergent gameplay.
They're going for the emergent gameplay. Last year, give or take, they released a survival mode for Fallout 4 that was hugely successful. Instead of it being very gamified, it was you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to sleep. You know what we standard see for
7
survival.
days kind of thing.
Yeah, or even Minecraft.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they kind of said, "Hey, this is interesting. People are liking it. Let's push this." And
so what's your goal? Like, what's your goal for the game? Is it just strictly survive from people trying to kill you all the time, or is there actual questing? Or
there's questing, there's building. Like it's going to have the whole building your own settlement, like basically the version for Fallout 4, but amped up.
What was that game we played where you would have to make little porta potties or whatever? You would make your own your little shack, and you would lock the door, and people come and break your door down.
Oh, that was
H1Z1?
Yeah, back in the original. But the idea being is that it's emergent gameplay. It's your Rust or your 7 Days or your whatnot, where you can go into the world, you can explore it, and fight monsters, get loot, build a base.
Well, I mean,
there's 6 months later. 6 months later, there will be a battle royale for it. 100%.
No, they have flat out said no, not interested.
I don't believe it.
Well, there's going to be like a full story mode and quests that the robots are going to give you and stuff like that. There's still be like single player stuff to do.
Yeah, it's just a question of how much can you do. Like, I'm excited because it's the very first best of the game ever that has co-op. And so I've always looked at the Skyrims or the Fallouts and gone, this is super fun. I'm loving it. I'd love to have a friend with me.
Right.
So it's the first opportunity that we might actually get something like that. It's just whether or not it's...
But under PvP duress the whole time.
Whether or not the PvP duress is going to be an issue. They said that they're doing some creative things to curb that. We'll have to see how successful they are. Beta will be soon.
I think they've said like if you die, you respawn like not too far away. The only penalty for death is you get respawned, like a little distance away from where you died. But the penalty for actively killing other people is bigger. It's kind of like I think it was kind of like it reminded me of like the old Ultima Online system, where it's like, I'm gonna murder you, and then you could like flag them a criminal, and then if they kept doing it, they would become like a murderer, and then they just get like stacking penalties for being like super hyper aggressive against other players.
The one thing that is nice is death does not make you lose your stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
So killing people, you don't get their stuff, so that will not incentivize that style of play.
Good.
And then of course, now of course they are taking potential trolling to a whole new level. With that, you can get all your friends together and take over a nuclear silo, and then launch a nuke at some random place on the map.
Yeah, but you don't really want to do that, because whenever you nuke an area, it becomes like irradiated, and then it puts. From what I was watching a video on YouTube about it, they were kind of explaining this whole system. You drop a nuke, and basically what you're doing when you drop this nuke is you're setting up like a raid zone where there's special loot in these chests that spawn when you drop a nuke on a place. And the area that you nuke determines the loot table that has the potential of spawning these legendary items in these chests that spawn once the area becomes irradiated. So yeah, you could drop a nuke on somebody's encampment, but you're basically just dropping a raid zone on them. and then you're going to want to run in there. You're going to want to run in there and loot it and fight the new monsters and get the super good loot anyways. So, I mean, yeah, you could drop a nuke on somebody's base, but there's a chance you could be plopping a legendary weapon down right next to them.
Just drop Molten Core right on top of Stormwind.
Yeah. Man, I'm sick of running.
Yep.
Nice.
I mean, eventually these guards are going to kill Ragnaros, and they're going to get the loot, but this is going to be great in the meantime.
Well, kind of moving on here. Are there any updates for Pantheon?
Yeah, they so they're trying to release the subset of classes like every month, and they just dropped the tank classes. So Dire Lord, which is essentially Shadow Knight, Warrior, and Paladin were revealed, and so folks can go and check out like all the resource management and abilities and passives and stuff that they're going to be getting. It finally kind of unveils a lot of curiosity that people had with the tank classes, because they haven't released much information about how it will work, how the threat system will work, and so people are finally getting a chance to kind of see how the tanking is going to be. And I think for the most part, people are pretty darn happy because the three classes are pretty well defined in regards to like what their playstyle is going to be, which kind of bodes well considering it's still in pre-alpha and they still have time for tuning. But even in pre-alpha, it seems like they've defined them pretty well and folks are kind of happy.
Cool. Nice.
Although I will say, I read through the write-ups, and holy crap, does Warrior look like it's going to be John Madden Feral Druid?
Yeah, it's pretty complicated. I think they might have to do something about the resource management for it. It's a little complicated. But then again, Dire Lord looks kind of complicated too. In regards to managing, like it's a lot to manage as far as like your resistances and stuff like that. You have to do it manually. But I don't know, people kind of want that. The subset of people that are going to be playing this game are not looking for the casual experience anyway. So
well, something I've always said is it behooves a developer to actually include that level of skilled gameplay for the people who want it. Some people like the I push one button and I just hold that button down. Yeah. Some people want I want to play piano with my keyboard.
Yeah, I think Paladin will be probably the least complicated of the three. But
I just really like rolling my face around on my keyboard and then seeing things happen.
You mean Warlock?
I'm a huge
that
fan
unfortunately is not a thing.
No, I'm a huge fan of the Overwatch Bastion right click with intensity play of the game. Style.
Yeah.
Hold down one mouse button and win. That's great fun. I
think if you get into the game, Mike, I fully expect you're going to play an enchanter.
Yeah. I haven't
they are
read the
crowd
enchanter.
Control and support. They do things like by attacking things, they generate mana for the party, which supports the cleric. They do crowd control, CC, and mezzing, and like I think that is going to bode well for you. Although it's going to be stressful.
I went through the classes on the website just to see, because like of
the
older classes
changed a lot.
When you posted the tank stuff.
Oh,
okay.
Like the
tanks, they have their picture with like their new thing and what their abilities do. But some of the original classes that they posted up there have the old layout where it's just like they do this kind of general stuff.
Yep.
And so I was looking through everything. So the older general stuff, I was like, well, I don't really care. They're going to update those, and then I'll know exactly what they do. But what I was looking through, the Ranger sounded super neat. Mm-hmm. They had some really cool sounding abilities.
The community manager Kilson posted day before yesterday about revamping the old classes on the website and getting them more in tune with what they're doing. And they say, yep, absolutely. When they do their next spotlight, when they finish the spotlight for all the classes, they're going to update them. And this was probably the most exciting thing that happened to me all week. Rumor has it, one of the lead developers say that they are feeling more optimistic than ever that Bards will be on release.
Oh, nice.
So I am super happy to hear that, because it was intentionally a plan that Necromancer and Bard would only be released in a further release after launch. So I'm pretty happy about that, because that's what I want to play as Bard.
Well, cool. Well, kind of moving along here. I don't know what all these acronyms mean. So something's happening in August, guys.
August is Monster Hunter World and Battle for Azeroth, and then the Dauntless update.
Monster Hunter World may have been pushed back to September.
I heard October.
Or October, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
then I
Just
am
a-
slightly.
just a heads up.
Actually, no, that's fine because
It's
by
convenient.
September, yeah, I'll be done with Battle for Azeroth.
Yep.
Be
That's
done
what
with
I thought.
Dauntless. Be ready for some Monster Hunter.
Yeah,
Actually, I
it's
think
probably
October would
fine.
be a really good time to
Yeah.
really dig into that.
I was even telling the buddy that told me that, I was like, you know what? That actually plays better for me, so we're good.
Yeah.
It really does, yeah.
So it just occurred to me for the first time ever that End of Line has a green screen, and so I can put whatever I want behind him.
Mm-hmm.
God.
And I am like, I really want to abuse that
Sure.
now. So I'm just gonna. There we go.
I would.
There we go.
All right.
I don't have the stream up, so I don't know what you put,
Well,
but I'm sure
the
it's
thing
great.
that I am very excited about is that Incredibles 2 came out yesterday, and
Did it?
we're going to go see it tomorrow because I'm super excited.
Okay, I guess that's what we're doing tomorrow too then.
It's Father's Day tomorrow, which is the other thing
Else.
I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And
Incredibles 2 is a great Father's Day movie.
yeah, and our child also loves The Incredibles, so we're gonna go do it as a family affair.
I've heard it is good. Not amazing, but still good.
There are things I've seen in the previews that I went, oh, they're gonna ruin this by making it like this, but it doesn't matter. I love the first one so much that they could put a pile of shit in front of me and I'd probably love it because
They're going to
It's
ruin it by
Incredibles.
putting Frozone's wife in it.
yeah. So
I mean, she is the greatest good he's ever gonna get. So.
yeah, but you gotta say it with attitude. I am the greatest good. Anyway.
I don't think I can pull that off.
So
It feels like appropriation.
Moving right along. It's wife cultural appropriation. All right, so moving right along, what has everyone been playing recently? Anybody play anything we haven't already talked about?
Well, still
Yeah.
playing Path of Exile.
I actually I installed Deus Ex Mankind Divided last night. I've been looking for like a more narrative experience.
That's what I want. Yeah.
You'll get it there.
I've been playing a lot of multiplayer games and just the play-to-play kind of games lately.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? I need something different. I need a more narrative kind of thing. And I was like, perfect. I'll install this because it's literally been sitting there in my Steam library for about a year now.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's about time to play it.
Nice.
Super fun. I've always loved that series. So
I'll have to check it out. I saw. I heard what's Detroit becoming human.
Detroit Mankind.
God
yeah.
damn it! I want to play that game so much. It is right up my alley. I've loved that studio forever. I loved Fahrenheit, which was I think their first main game.
Mm-hmm.
Or Indigo Prophecy, I think is what it was called here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Absolutely.
more of a visual novel type of game, right? Like it's
It's basically an more interactive visual novel for all intents and
okay.
um,
I might check that out because I really like the, like the story with QuickTime events type of, like the Telltale games and.
yeah.
Like a Heavy Rain.
Yeah, they did Heavy Rain, so that's the exact kind of thing you're expecting.
Yeah.
And
If
I'm
you wanna
super
play
stoked.
it-
I want to play it. I just don't have a PlayStation, and I'm not going to buy a PlayStation just for it. So
Oh, is it only
I'm
on
planning
PlayStation?
on
yeah,
game flying it, Nightsun. When I do, I'll just let you borrow my PS4 and you can play it.
There you go.
I mean, seriously, I don't play it very much. Like, I'm just gonna play through it because I want to play it too. So I'm just gonna game fly it.
Yeah. Well, and the kid's got a PS4, so if you do that, I'll get in on that too if you want.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds
Well,
awesome.
I don't know because I missed our last podcast, but did you guys recap our Dungeon World game at all? Because that's the last thing I played.
I don't remember.
Well,
don't
we
think so.
played Dungeon World last Saturday.
Yeah, we did.
Which is the last
Yep.
thing I played. And we were in Heroes, which was,
Y'all made Magic Weapon.
yeah.
Ooh, y'all did?
Yeah, we did.
I had to
Oh yeah,
stop.
I did.
I had to
I'm
stop
in a
around the
Magic
time y'all were on the rooftop, and the kid was turned the corner and ran straight into the.
Oh, that was really early on. Yeah, we saved the city and bathed the sword in the blood of a god. and
Yeah, you missed
Okay.
a lot.
yeah, you
I
missed
mean,
a lot.
Yeah, apparently.
When you left, there was a gelatinous cube beating a little boy.
Yes.
And while you were gone,
That
stabbed-
became the least important thing that was
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. I mean, we still have to take care of that, but that's tomorrow's problem.
I mean, we have a bag of holding that has a sort of outer world demon probably trapped in it
Yep.
now.
Yep, you do
Yeah.
have that.
A sword that was bathed in the blood of a god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds legit.
So
I'm
if you
about to
wanna
be
if you wanna
leader
see
of a
all those
rogue
shenanigans, definitely go back and watch episode 3, and join us for episode 4, and we'll see what happens next. I'm excited. Well, what are we playing and what am I excited for is actually all the same thing, which is today, right after this, for the first time since March, we are playing our long-running RPG game that we have had absolutely no time to do in months. And we're all getting together in real life here at our place to play What's in the Box.
Off-stream.
Off stream to play What's in the Box, which is the Savage Worlds game that Kurt is running, that we've been playing for like 2 or 3 years. And I'm very excited because it's my favorite game.
Spiritual sequel to Katie Germany. And Katie Germany base.
I don't know, man. It doesn't have. Those are very different games.
They are very different games.
Very different
I
games.
miss.
That's why I
miss
said. That's why I said
Sure.
spiritual sequel.
Well, I mean, they both started out as one thing, and then the players refused to let go and became a different thing.
That is true. That is
So that happened to both
that
of
is
those games.
the similarity between Katie Germany and What's in the Box.
Yeah,
Come on, you guys like that though.
yeah.
Yeah. Yay. Fan favorite, you know, you got to keep it
Yeah.
going.
Didn't we discover that the box was your brain last time?
The box was your brain?
Yeah. I think we discovered that the box is your brain.
We did. Yeah, What's in the
I
Box
thought
is my
the
brain.
box was our gold boxes on the ship that we.
That's what it started out as, but
Yeah. Well, now
it's
what's in the
evolved.
because everyone has a dark rider for some reason.
Yeah.
Everyone's got like some
everyone has something talking to them in their head. So What's in the
No.
box?
the box is your brain.
The box is your brain, and it's whatever demon creature,
It was
God,
It
or
was definitely an unintentional recurring theme amongst all of the characters who were made completely independent of each other.
right.
Mhm.
And we had 3 random people in people's domes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cicero
yeah.
doesn't have anybody in Cicero's head.
You carry around someone in your shield.
That is true.
That's true.
You do.
So
you have
Your
you have
goblin
a,
is.
you have
your
a
other-
That's
gnome
not
living in your
right.
shield.
That's not my
Just
box.
go with it.
Well, the shield is your box.
Just let it happen.
Just go with it. It hurts less if you don't struggle. All right. I guess it is time to move on to our spotlight topic of the day, which is intro to role playing.
All right. Well, this is the first part of a series that I've wanted to do for a while because I know a lot of people that don't know what role playing is, and
It's unfortunate that Hander is not here to be a part of this conversation.
yeah. I really wish Handler could be here to hit a buzzer every time we say a word he doesn't understand. But if you're in the chat and we say a word you don't understand, feel free to at us, and that'll be our buzzer.
I will be watching the chat to make sure that if you have questions, they get answered.
Yeah, so my primary goal here is for people who are either unfamiliar with role-playing games or if you want to introduce someone to role-playing games but you're not sure how to introduce them, I want this to be a resource. So the first question on our intro to role-playing is, what is a role-playing game? Now, I have some headers and brief descriptions, but then we're going to break after each little description and open it up for for the whole cast to offer their tell me why I'm wrong, basically.
And to just interject something, each one of these points could probably become a massive multi-hour topic all on its own.
Right.
So we'll probably revisit this and cover a few more in depth as time goes on.
Yeah, we're going
And
to
all
skim
of the-
stuff today, but
All of the items in this list are tabletop role-playing games.
yes. So first off, we are discussing tabletop role-playing games where you are going to be sitting around a table with pencils and paper or sitting at your computer staring at a video screen, conferencing with friends. They do not require a video game of any kind. All right. So what is a
Or
role-playing
foam
game?
swords, chainmail armor.
Well, we should definitely do an episode on LARPing, but since none of us have LARPed, I feel like we need a guest for that episode. All right, so
I think you might know some people.
a role-playing game is a framework or set of rules meant to guide and help adjudicate the telling of a collaborative story. So, basically, a role-playing game is a set of rules that you use to tell stories with your friends collaboratively. Anybody want to add to that?
Yep. Nope, that's it.
Well,
It's a construct to tell a story.
and the level of those rules can vary from almost non-existent to crunchy bits that will dictate exactly how you pick up a glass of water.
Mm-hmm. We should definitely define crunch later so that people know what we're saying when we say crunch. All right, so the next header here is, what are they like? I asked this question. I asked this question on Facebook. What do you say to a new person when you want to describe role-playing games to them? So this is a distilled down version of several of those answers, and we can break them down and sort of say why we think each one works or doesn't work. It's like watching a movie, but you are the main character and you decide what they say and do. It's also like cops and robbers. But when you say you shoot, we use the rules of the game to see if you hit. And it's like that question, what would you do if you won the lottery? Ultimately, it's playing pretend. So, the reason I love the lottery line in this is because what would you do if you won the lottery is probably the only form of imaginative play that is encouraged in adults.
I don't think I've ever thought of it that way.
It's the only time you get to play pretend as an adult. And it's encouraged. Everybody gets that question, right? Everybody knows, oh, well, now let's ask what if. But for the most part, after about age 10, you don't get to play cops and robbers with your friends anymore. Or whatever.
You don't?
Unless you actually become a cop and or robber.
And different games are going to have a different focus. Some are going to be more heavily on the story. Some are going to be more heavy on simulation of real-world situations. But for the most part, it's playing pretend. It just depends on how involved you are in that process. Any thoughts there before we move on to the next header?
Nope.
I mean, you kind of said, what are they like? I think kind of being supportive of other people playing pretend is also part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, forming a group and being vulnerable with your friends and gaining support for that vulnerability versus ridicule, which is how we normally get when in normal life. When you're vulnerable, you get ridiculed because you're not supposed to show emotion in normal life.
Yeah. Don't be a jerk when that Englishman turns into a Russian just completely randomly during a game.
What is problem?
One thing to add is a large part of it is improvisational theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It is taking how you are acting, taking how your fellow people are acting, and reacting to those situations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also a little bit like a board game, right? If you're familiar with games where you have to, like strategy games where you have to make complex decisions, it can be like that too if that's what you want out of the game. Some games focus more heavily on the strategy, the hard choices, the minute decisions versus the sort of story or flowy decisions. But that's a spectrum, right? Like on one end, it's complete story narrative and you don't really engage with strategy at all. And on the opposite side, it's a board game. And so there's this...
I think we'll cover that. I think we'll cover that part more later during the role-playing versus role-playing.
ROLE playing versus
Yeah, 'cause
ROLL playing?
that's really
Yeah.
that's the spectrum is what you're talking about there.
All right. Okay, so our next header is, what do you do? So you, as a player, assume a role of a character in a fictional world and dictate how that character will respond to the situations and challenges they are presented with. This can be done by any combination of acting, speaking as the character, or making choices and describing the character's actions. So there's you embody a character, you embody a role. That's what the role in role playing is for. You take on the role of the character you're portraying in this world. When your character is presented with situations like this guard won't let you into the city, or how are you going to hack into the mainframe to, steal the garbage file, you embody that character and you make choices. Well, we're going to go to the phone booth and we're going to hack in from there, or well, I'm going to be really charismatic and I'm going to talk this guard into letting me into the city. You can do that on a spectrum of acting out that scene complete improv, where you, in first person, address the guard and the person who's playing the guard addresses you back and you have that conversation, and you can kick it all the way to the flip side where you say, I convinced the guard because I'm super cool, and then now the rules of the game pick up the slack for that conversation.
I think Handor actually, after we had our first Dungeon World game and character creation and all that kind of stuff, he was sitting here hearing this description of what role-playing is and what do you do, how do you embody a character, and he was actually very surprised to see how that kind of organically develops from sitting down with the rules of whatever system you're playing and figuring out your stats and doing all that stuff, and then seeing how the personality of this pretend character develops, because just through building our characters and just slightly talking to each other a little bit as our characters, he was able to see how, you don't have to necessarily go in with this, like, this is who I'm going to be. Sometimes just organically you're able to create this personality and comfortably sit within whatever that is going to be without having to, make huge decisions about who this person is right away.
And then, like you were saying, Kurt, you were pointing out, that's something I notice a lot when I'm watching like actual plays. There's two kind of styles of that I've noticed of people when they're playing a character. So like there's the one type of person who's approaching the character like this is a completely separate entity. So when they're doing anything, they're like, well, he's going to do this and he's going to do that, and they're describing their character's actions as it's another thing, another person doing these actions. And then there's the other type who are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's like those are the people who are like, I feel like they're more like into the character and more into like the story. And that's something that I've kind of noticed like about myself, I think, like looking back, whenever I'm making a character and designing a character, because I'm very much of I'm very cognizant of my role in the role-playing versus role-playing argument. Like I'm very much a mechanic person when building a character, but when we're actually in the game, I try to do the I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that more often to try to like put myself in the character. And for me, when I'm like watching actual plays, when I notice the people saying he's gonna do this or my character's gonna do this, it's kind of like a disconnect. Like to me, it kind of draws me out of it.
Yeah, me too. Well, it's like we were talking before we got on stream, we were talking about the characters that we've been playing in this What's in the Box game that Kurt runs. And when I talk about my character, I talk about it as her name is Isabel, and it's Isabel did this or Isabel did that, or this is what Isabel's gonna do. But then once we're in game, it's I'm doing this, I do this, what So it's like I talk about her as if she's a different person than I am in the post, but while we're playing it, it's I am her and I'm embodying that character.
When I play, I tend to bounce back and forth. Depending on the scene that's happening and whether or not there are NPCs, or if I'm addressing another character. So if we're describing, if we're in a scene where my character is the only one in the room, say I'm playing a thief and I'm robbing a house and there's nobody else in the house, I don't say I do this or I check upstairs. I say, well, I think he goes around upstairs, and I describe what that looks like, or I think he does this or I do this. And then as soon as there's another NPC or another player character there, NPC is a non-player character, someone who is controlled by the game master. We'll discuss that a little bit later. And a player character is someone who's controlled by the players. They only have their one character. So no matter which one it is, if there's another character there, then I think I jump into first person and I address the character. You know, hey, this is what I want to do, or let's go around the corner and quick, up to the side, they're coming. Like, I'll jump into first person, and I kind of bounce back and forth depending on the situation.
I think it also depends on the game that you're playing, like the person who's running the game, if they're the type of person who talks about things outside of themselves and they say like, oh, this guard does this or this does that, and they're not talking in first person, then it leads the players at the game to also kind of act in that way. Or if you have the person running the game who's very immersive in the storytelling and doesn't pull themselves out of it, they talk as the barkeep, and it's not the barkeep comes over and he tells you that you need to whatever, but they say, this gentleman walks up to you, hey, what are you doing? You know, the difference in the way the game runner, game master, whatever, the way they talk in the game is also going to help the players determine how they're going to act in the game as well.
Yeah, I think the person running the game master, typically fulfills the role of creative director, right, or director, where they sort of set the tone for the game, usually, and so it's on them a lot of times to sort of set, is this going to be an in-character scene or an out-of-character scene, unless someone else initiates it. But something that we'll probably talk a lot about in later episodes is things like yes and, which is an improv term, which means if someone presents a new truth that doesn't break immersion, accept it and add to it. So if for instance, if I'm running a game and I was describing a third-person scene and one of the players starts talking to one of the NPCs in person, I'm going to accept that fact that that's true now and move on from there, right? I'm going to go ahead and drop into first person and have that scene with that player, because I want to reward engagement. So if anytime you do something, it's important for the other people at the table and for you to do this for others to accept the reality that has been presented and add to it, and don't block by saying, "Oh, well, I don't want to. That doesn't happen." So that's a deeper topic.
Absolutely.
That's for the GM episode.
Yeah, that is definitely for the GM episode.
Anything else to what do you do as a role player? I mean, you roll dice. You collaboratively create a story with your friends.
Do math or have somebody do it for you.
Sometimes you do math. Sometimes there is math. Depending on the game, there could be more or less math. Sometimes
there may even be spreadsheets.
Right. Sometimes there are spreadsheets.
And then your game master gives up on you.
Yeah. If the game master didn't bring the spreadsheets, you probably don't get to use them. Yeah. Go ahead.
And ultimately, it have fun. It's designed, like everything that we have said is kind of fluid. There are no hard set rules. You do what you and the handful of friends that you've conned into playing with you find fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody has their own styles. Like Areztez was saying, you know, when he was talking about the difference between roll as in ROLL and roll as in ROLE. Even within our normal group, we all have different styles of playing, but we're still able to play with each other and have a good time, even though the difference in our role playing, you know, can be on that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think I'm going to move on to our next section. What are they called? So this is... I think most people who've heard of role-playing games have heard of Dungeons & Dragons. Or D&D. Dungeons & Dragons is kind of the Kleenex of RPGs, where not that you blow your snot into it, but that it is taken on, its name is synonymous with the thing itself. However, there are many other games that are very different than Dungeons & Dragons, which also are important as role-playing games. And so I tend to shy away from using D&D as a generic term for role-playing games. Mm-hmm. But it's so ubiquitous that anyone who's heard of role-playing games has probably heard of D&D or Dungeons & Dragons just because of its appearance in things like Stranger Things and Community and other pop culture stuff like that. And, of course, the satanic panic of the 80s. We should definitely do a history of Dungeons & Dragons in a future episode, and because it was one of the first role-playing games. But there are so many others that fulfill different goals. So...
I mean, it's definitely like when someone asks you, oh, what kind of stuff do you do for fun, or what are your hobbies? And like the system I enjoy playing probably the least is D&D, not because I don't like D&D, but I think I like other systems more. Mm-hmm. But if someone asks me, you know, what do you do when they're not part of the role-playing community? I say, oh, I play role-playing games, you know, like D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. That's the first game I'm going to say. I'm not going to jump in with all of these other systems that I know they've never heard of, because that's the one that is the Kleenex of role-playing games.
Yeah. It'd be like if you were trying to explain sports to someone from America and you said, you know, it's like baseball.
Right.
It doesn't have to be baseball, but that's what you're going to use to describe what a sport is.
Yeah, but actually it's cricket. And
yeah, sure.
The thing
it's
they
like
can understand
baseball,
is like, it's like baseball.
How do you explain rugby? It's like football.
Right.
But with no pads. So that's, I mean, D&D ends up being a starting point for a lot of discussions about role-playing games. But our next section is how are they different? And so I kind of want to break down the different styles of games and then just briefly touch on, like, here are some examples of those games. So role-playing games tend to be a spectrum from, like I said, story, like full narrative type games and simulationist type games. So this is going to be affected by the rules of the game. Dungeons & Dragons is a combat simulator. That's what it does best. It simulates fantasy combat. It does.
I shoot you with my bow and arrow.
Yeah, I stab him with my sword. Cool. There's a lot of different ways for you to stab him with your sword. I have a lot of feelings about this situation.
What was that, Night Sun?
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say one key thing that Dungeons & Dragons does, even beyond that, is, and this is another sliding scale, is where the narrative control is. Right. Dungeons & Dragons, the narrative control is pretty solely in the hands of the DM or Dungeon Master, the referee of the game.
It's pretty... Oh, go ahead.
It's designed for, you know, one person out of box to have a module or have a set of what they're going to be running, and they are telling a story that the other people get to inject in experience.
Right.
It's not as much like the framework is not as much a collaborative effort as some of the others.
Yeah.
Right.
The individual happenings are definitely collaborative, and the game itself is a collaborative experience. Mm-hmm. But where you start from and the plot points and whatnot tend to be done beforehand, before any of the players come to the table.
Right. And I think when I address that games are a framework, the default assumptions and what you get from reading the book is not every table's experience. So Dungeons & Dragons expects, or the default assumption is that one person is going to control everything in the world and have complete narrative, like they're going to have everything in their head when it starts, and the players are just going to respond to that stimulus. But that's a scale, like you said, to games as a conversation where everyone is sort of expected to contribute to the narrative and things are a little more improv or on the fly. Different tables are going to do different things. So just because one table plays D&D a certain way doesn't mean another table is going to play D&D the same way. But if by the book, that is the default assumption, is that the GM or the person running the game is going to have complete control over the world. Mm-hmm. Things that are slightly different than that, there's also the differences of setting. So Dungeons & Dragons' default setting is epic fantasy. It is swords and wizards and flying dragons and deep dungeons, whereas other games are going to focus on different settings. So all these different spectrums is where, when you find what you like, that's what you're going to want to find a game that does that thing. So if, for instance, if you prefer modern games, you want to play a game in a modern setting, but you still want magic, well, there's going to be a game that does that. You want to play a modern setting where you're in a street gang, and there's no magic, and it's just how do you get along in this gritty world, and it's really deadly. There's a game for that. Mm-hmm. So some of the things on this list here are, and on that spectrum, if you like epic fantasy, you can have a sliding scale of narration versus, like, Dungeon World is highly narrative versus Dungeons and Dragons, which is very rules heavy. There's also several editions of Dungeons and Dragons which scale the different rules.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like, the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition, is a little more rules light than most modern Dungeons and Dragons games, but it's still more rules heavy than an OSR, old school Renaissance, Moldvay D&D, right? The really old versions of D&D. So there's a spectrum there. If you're looking for something that's more more modern, like you want to play in space, cool. There's lots of space games. You could play Star Wars and do it as a space opera with wizards. You could do Traveler and play truck driving simulator in space. You can find a PBTA game that focuses on space travel.
PBTA is?
Powered by the Apocalypse. I think PBTA is going to be its own episode because there are so many, and what PBTA means is sort of defined by its creator. But for now, there was a game called Apocalypse World. It's a very narrative-driven game, which simulates being in a post-apocalyptic setting where the characters drive the fiction, drive the action. A lot of people made different versions of that game.
We are currently playing a PBTA in Dungeon World, which is a fantasy game, not a post-apocalyptic world game. Which is why I think you're right. We should do a whole episode, maybe not a whole episode, but a future episode on all the different versions of PBTA.
Right. Because there's definitely, if you like the idea of high narrative, characters drive the action, but you don't like the setting, there's tons of settings. And the different games do different things. There are games which are intended for you to play and have fun and do some escapism. Like D&D is very much an escapist thing. It's a hero fantasy. Whereas games like Monster Hearts or Velvet Glove are empathy machines. They're games which are intended to put you in a marginalized group's position and beat on you until you feel bad like they did, so you can empathize with that person. But that can be that can be enjoyable. I'm not going to say it can be fun because some people have fun that way, but it can be important to play an empathy game. But not everyone's going to want to do that, right? Not everyone's going to want to walk away from the table crying because they got hit with something really heavy.
Well, and not only does not everybody necessarily want to do that, but some people aren't good at that. I think when we were talking about find, what kind of role player you are and have fun in the way that you like to have fun, some people can't let themselves be that emotionally available in pretend world. And so that's just not the kind of game they should play. And some people are really great at it. There are a lot of actual plays out there of it that are really great.
And some people don't have empathy.
CA Sith Lord in the chat is saying, don't forget other indie games like Tales from the Loop or other 2D20 stuff from Modiphius. Tales from the Loop is a great example of a game that really hits on a specific setting and way of playing. So Tales from the Loop, you play kids in the 80s that never was, basically Stranger Things. Like you play Stranger Things.
That sounds super fun.
You are kids and you explore far sci-fi of the 80s world, right? Where there's robots and there's weird tech happening, but it's kind of out of your grasp a little bit. And everything there's a lot of wonder, but also you're stuck in this mundane world. So there's tons of types of games. And so if you play a game like Dungeons and Dragons and you go, oh, I don't think this is for me, it may not be that role-playing isn't for you. It may be that game or that setting isn't for you. And so I encourage you to look into other games and find your setting.
I mean, like we
I
were
always
saying.
have like. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike.
I always have like a lot of fun playing as kids. Like, what was
Yeah.
the game that Bill Roper was running?
Grimm.
Grimm.
That's the same one
That
I ran the
game
Willy
is-
Wonka game in.
Yeah, that game is super fun. I always love those games so much.
It's a good
Yeah.
game. Yeah,
Yeah,
Grimm is basically
Grimm is fun.
Narnia, right? You play, except you're going to like a fantasy world and like more traditional fantasy world, I guess, other than Narnia. But you play kids who, in your normal day-to-day life, it's like mundane and boring, but then you end up in this magic world and there's cool magic stuff happening, and so it's that flip side of, it's like Alice in Wonderland, right?
I think when Bill Roper ran that game for us, it was Alice in Wonderland, and it was our first introduction to Grimm, and that it was so much fun. Sometimes it's difficult, I think, to let yourself have that childlike wonder in real life, and so it's kind of fun sometimes to get to embody that, like, as a little kid, how glorious and wonderful the world is when you explore it for the first time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And getting to like kind of let yourself embody that for a 4-hour period is kind of fun. And also looking at dark, scary things that as grown-up role-playing characters we would be like, let's go, and you're playing a kid and you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of scared to do, and so it's kind of fun to play that sometimes and play with more imagination.
Yeah. I think that's a good transition into our role playing games for me. Role playing games can be a commitment. They can. When you go to play, you're discussing with your friends, how often are we going to play this game? Is it once a month, once a week? Can I be there? Right. So there's a bit of commitment to it. But there's also, you're committing to respect and empower your friends for 2 to 4 hours at a time, where they can be free. They can be vulnerable. They can try things out and say things and expect that you're going to be there to support them and probably laugh, right? You might laugh at them, but you're laughing with them, right? You're not going to ridicule them for being vulnerable.
Don't worry, the intervention's next week, Kurt.
I know.
I'm not going to ridicule you for being vulnerable. There's a million reasons I could ridicule you.
But they build camaraderie. I mean, I read once
Sometimes it builds animosity.
Sometimes. I read once that when you play a role-playing game, it evokes the same response as some people who were in combat together. Because when you're working in your imagination, when you're creating memories, after some time, there's no difference between the imagined memory that you shared at the table and the real memory that happened in your life. Mm-hmm. They may not be as drastic as being in combat, but it's basically a team building, right? Like, you are forming shared memories, and those build camaraderie.
Some of the best stories that we sit around and tell are, we were playing this game and that crazy thing happened, or this crazy thing whatever, and it's like sharing stories from things that we have done in real life, except they were at a table and we were eating snacks when we were doing it.
All the best stories involve snacks.
All the best stories involve snacks.
It's my favorite thing about game day.
The snacks.
The snacks. But yeah, I mean, I think being that emotionally available, feeling like you're able to open up and be a little silly. And maybe it's not silly like, crazy voice or whatever, but sometimes it's letting your imagination take over and not being that, I sit at a desk and I do serious business all week long. And it's like, you gotta, let some of that go and let yourself have fun. And maybe it's summoning demons, and maybe it's shooting the legs off of innocent people, and maybe it's...
Sometimes you save a village.
Sometimes you save a village. Exactly. Like, letting yourself play in your imagination and supporting your friends while they play in theirs as well is that's, you got to be able to do that with role playing.
And sometimes you're teenage sex monsters and you make everyone cry who listens to your podcast. I don't know if any of those people watch this, but
I haven't got to that episode yet, but
But
I think something that we mentioned in an earlier episode kind of pulls into this as well, which is letting yourself, are you ready to be a role player? Are you ready to play these kinds of games? Can you leave disputes that you had in character at the table and still be friends with your friends later? If Night Sun's character attacks Gidget's character and tries to kill her, and then she retaliates and attacks Night Sun back, and they try to kill each other, we're still friends when we stand up from the table, even though our characters don't like each other and would...
I swear to God, Gidge, if you get one more of my characters kicked out of the group.
You jumped in the volcano all on your own.
I feel like if you're gonna do that, you need to keep that conflict between the characters in the same game.
Instead of having it twice in 2 separate games.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. But, being able to still be friends when you get up from the table is really important, because those things that happened in-game happened between your characters. They didn't happen between you guys. And like we said in that earlier episode, if it starts to bleed into real life, it's time to, sit down and have a grown-up conversation about the way it is.
CA Dave in the chat says, "Look, I still like Stu, even though I had to flirt with him over a fan."
Yeah, exactly.
If you get a chance, definitely go check out Happy Jack's actual play and look for their
the L5R one,
Legend
right?
of Five Rings actual play.
Yeah.
If you're into that sort of thing, it is very nice.
I've always wanted to try L5R.
I would love to run an L5R game.
All right, do it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to run more games on this channel. But yeah, so that
I will volunteer right now to run Demigods once I get it.
Okay, I have the beta. I have the beta right now.
Cool.
Will you run it right now?
Not right now.
We have to play What's in the Box. We
I
have
will
not played
forward
these
it to you,
characters
and you
since
can
March.
run it.
I will throw a fit.
I can't wait to play that game again. All right,
Yeah.
so
I think we should leave the next topic for a future.
that's what I was gonna say. The next thing that we had was types of role playing, but you know what? We're getting a little long in the tooth, and
I think what I'd like, before we kind of end this, does anybody have anything they want to say about what their personal favorite role playing system is?
sure, yeah.
I will say that if you are interested in the post-apocalyptic setting but don't really care for narrative games, you could always play Gamma World, which is my personal favorite post-apocalyptic setting, and it's a 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons hack, and it is super fun for post-apocalyptic games. It's not my favorite, but it's fun.
Yeah. Nightside?
Personally, I am always been a huge fan of Shadowrun, just as much the universe as it is the system.
Mm-hmm.
And Shadowrun is a cyberpunk setting.
Yeah, cyberpunk. If you've seen the movie Bright on Netflix or Johnny Mnemonic from a million years ago,
I think Johnny Mnemonic is a better example.
Well, no, Bright encompasses the magic part of it, whereas
And
Johnny
the different
Mnemonic
races.
covers
I wish Bright was a better movie.
I hate you. Bright was amazing.
He just wishes it would be better. He didn't say it wasn't good. He said he wished it was better.
I wish they had done better.
I think my favorite thing about playing Shadowrun is the handful of dice that you roll when you roll, because it's it's like 20. You run so many. It's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, that is definitely a huge aspect of it, of being able to pick up 20 dice and just crap. We don't have enough dice.
So
Time to start rating monopolies.
End of line. What is your favorite system?
What is what?
What's your favorite
My
RPG
favorite
system?
RPG? I think
Is it Dread or Savage Worlds or
I 7 candles now.
7 Candles?
10 candles.
10 candles.
10 candles.
10
No, he's
candles.
playing hardcore edition.
Hardcore. You start with 7.
Maybe it's just
Streamline
because
rules.
it's fresh in my mind a little bit, but I have to say probably my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not standard tabletop, but it is role playing. It is RPG.
Well, it's a narrative. And we rolled dice, so it is definitely a role playing game.
It's yeah. I would say that is on the story game side, as on the spectrum of rules versus story. That is all the way to the story side of the.
Yeah.
And
if I had to pick a system, I guess I would probably say Savage Worlds. Just because of it can be whatever you want it to be.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a nice baseline RPG because you can pretty much. It could be a superhero game. It could be a Western game. It can be a cyberpunk game. It could literally be whatever the hell you want it to be.
Yeah.
Well, and my favorite system is also Savage Worlds, and I think that goes back to the pulp game I played at my very first gaming convention, and then the campaign that I ran, which was a pulp game. And so that really kind of solidified my love for Savage Worlds, playing it in a pulp world. I feel like that's kind of what the system is best at, is pulp. It can do a lot of other things, but my favorite thing is to kill Nazis, so that's and do it while you're jumping from like a hot air balloon or a dirigible or something.
Well, you heard it here. Punch a Nazi in Savage Worlds.
There you go. Punch a Nazi.
I think my
Or in real life.
favorite.
Yeah, I think
well,
my
you can't do that in real life.
I think my favorite game is the game that I'm reading but not running. It is always the next game I'm gonna play is my favorite game, because I have GM ADD.
Because you're a system whore. Oops,
We
sorry.
used to call you an altaholic when you were playing WoW, and you would like get halfway through doing a character and you'd start a new one. But yeah, you're definitely like a system whore, and I can definitely vouch for the game you were most excited about is the next one that you're gonna get into.
I think my favorite system, like you were saying earlier, how Dungeons and Dragons is a combat sim. I think my favorite system itself, like for the system's sake, would be D&D 3.5. Just
knew you were gonna say
because
that.
for me, it's a building sim, and I've spent so many hours just theory crafting and building characters. I probably spent more time building characters and never playing them than actually playing the game. Just because that's what's fun for me, is like building characters and being like, on paper, this guy is a god, but I'm never going to play him in a game because that's not fun for anybody else.
Right.
Bullshit.
But no, that's not me. That's Gordon's artificer. Like, here, let me pull out this wand of fireballs. Crack. 50d6.
If you're gonna make a comment like that, don't say it in front of people who have played with both of you in 3.5 many times.
I play support. That's my thing. That's why I do support.
You guys
That's why
broke
Montauk-
every campaign I ever played in 3.5.
You know, the first time I ever played any like thing with you guys, Arist, is you grabbed two magical swords and like destroyed the entire universe. So
Well, that was the GM's fault. He shouldn't have put those in front of me. He knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you can't have Chekhov's magical swords and not expect them to go off.
right.
Never seen a GM so dejected in my
Oh my
life.
gosh. Well,
Than to just see people make characters and be like, well, this mod is completely worthless.
yep, destroyed the
Hey,
world.
I played completely by the rules until the mod broke them.
Yes.
Yeah. When the author was like, box text, this guy gets away regardless of what you try to do, that's when we said, okay, well then we're going to just go into this next game planning on two-manning it.
All right. Well, I think that is a great place to call it for today. We will definitely continue the discussion of what is role playing and, you know, how to get into it more and how to be the best role player you can be. Or GM or you know, game master or whatever it is that you're wanting to do.
Or the best average role player you can be.
Or the best mediocre role player you can be. So does anybody have any final words?
Thanks for joining us, CA Sith Lord.
Yeah. Bye, Dave. My favorite system to play is Grimm. That's it. I'll differentiate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just gonna say a new system every time there's a break in the conversation.
I think my
Anytime
final
somebody says
words are go play games.
Yeah.
Just play the game and try new.
Find
try
a
new
comic
games.
shop in your area or something. post in a forum somewhere. See if there's any locals out there that need a person, and don't be scared to do it.
I mean, that's how Kurt got involved. He just found something on, you know.
Dude, I went to the library and I met all you people.
Yeah. I mean, that's how this all started. We didn't know each other before role-playing games.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think we're about done. Who wants to pretend to be Handor today?
I can be Handor.
Hey, Kurt, did you write us an outro?
Oh, what? What? No.
God damn it, Matt.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching today.
Thank you guys. And if you'd like to contact the show, you can do so at Pixel. You can email us pixelscandal@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter at pixelscandal on Twitter, or follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/pixelscandal. Thanks.
For the YouTubes.
And and follow us, subscribe on YouTube, and all that kind of stuff if you like the things. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.